Well, pensioners are expected to be in line for a one-off cash payment of $250 in tonight's budget. It's part of the government's plan to ease the cost of living burden now without exposing the economy to longer-term inflationary risks. Let's bring in the Chief Advocate for National Seniors, Ian Henschke. Ian, relatively modest payment. What have you made of what we're hearing for seniors so far?
Well, I mean, $250, let's put it in perspective. If you own your own home and you're on a pension and you've got a bit of superannuation, $250 is going to be very welcome. If you are renting and your landlord's put up your rent by $5 a week, that's $260 in a year. So you can see what happens. And we should never forget that 1 in 4 pensioners lives in poverty. And of course, they're the ones who are renting. So this is why when we look at cost of living with pensioners, there are different groups in there. And that's why National Seniors has got number one priority, which incidentally has just been backed by Business New South Wales and a whole range of other business groups. And that is that you should let pensioners work and keep that income and simply pay income tax on it. So at the moment, we've got a very antiquated, convoluted social security system where if you work more than 1 day a week, you've got to go to Centrelink every fortnight. They take 50 cents in the dollar off your pension, and then you pay income tax on the top of that, and they've got a senior Australian pensioners tax offset. Tom, if I go on and tell you about it, you can see why so few pensioners work.
Yeah, well, this is the issue. I'm actually trying to navigate my father through it at the moment, who's hopeless at anything online. So for him, it's Centrelink in person or sit on the phone for a few hours. And he's self-employed, so it's a disaster. How much look at, are you getting any joy when you talk to the government? Because we've got a potential issue in terms of pensioners want to earn more. We've got shortfall in skills. What sort of jobs can this potential workforce do to alleviate the issues we're having?
They can do jobs right now. In fact, I can tell you that this policy came from one of our National Seniors members who runs a home care business, My Care Solution, from memory it was called, and he said that he's got pensioners on the books who work for him 1 day a week or maybe 2 days a week, but he can't get them to work 3 or 4 days a week because he would love them to work more, they would love to work more, but when they do, they risk either losing the pension. If they lose the pension, they lose benefits, etc., all those sorts of things. So they actually are very concerned about this, particularly in home care. Now, other areas are administration, hospitality. I'm talking to the National Farmers Federation today. They're very interested in looking at this policy. As I said, Business New South Wales have come out. The mining industry, Gina Reinhardt, has said that this has to be changed. We've got to have a fairer system. And incidentally, she says, why should a pensioner pay an effective rate of taxation more than a billionaire in this country? And this is the question people keep asking. Jim Chalmers came out last Friday. He was talking to Neil Mitchell, and he said it's something that Linda Burney's spoken of and we're going to look at, because we've been talking to Linda Burney, obviously, in the shadow ministry. I've been talking to Anne Ruston about it. It's almost as if they don't want to make a decision and because they say things like, oh, we've got to look at how much it will cost us. The thing is, it won't cost anything to the system, because if somebody works, like take your dad, right? He's going to work. He'll pay income tax. So if he gets a pension that's $25,000 and he earns $50,000, his total income will become $75,000. He'll pay tax on that. So when he pays that tax, he'll pay more than $10,000 in tax. So he's going to pay back half his pension. And he's going to provide service. He's going to be out in the community working. He's going to be happier, healthier, better. Now, if we bring this policy in, it'll be an absolute game changer in Australia, because when people get to pension age, instead of stopping or working 1 day a week, they might work 4 days in their 60s, 3 days in their 70s, a couple of days even in their 80s. Have a look around. Look at the people who are still working in their 80s. You've got people running businesses in their 80s, no problem at all. So, I used to work for Landline years ago, the ABC TV program. I remember interviewing Mr. Angove, and he was in charge of a winery. He used to go into work every single day, and he was in his late 80s. I mean,
well, yeah, for a lot of people, we're talking about the other potential benefit. People want to keep active. They want to ward off things such as dementia. So you get potential benefits all through the economy. You almost have a childcare style inhibition here, but for childcare at least, even if people are going back to work and not getting money for it effectively, they do it to further their career. Nobody's trying
That's
to further
right.
the career really in their, might be early 70s or whatever. You've got to do it because it's got some sort of benefit to the family budget.
Well, look, and the other thing is that we've got to remember is that if we look at this, we don't have to look far to see it in effect, because it's in effect in New Zealand. Now, 43% of people between 65 and 70 are still working in New Zealand, and we've got nowhere near that number. 24.8% of New Zealanders over 65 are still in the workforce. In Australia, we've got 14% in the workforce. Now, that's because the pensioners, who make up 3% of that, they don't work because we put the handbrake on them. We've got a thing called the pension work bonus. They get 1 day's work. When they do the second day, the handbrake comes on and you pay 65 cents in the dollar.
Ian, we're nearly out of time. Let me ask you this. You mentioned pensioners in poverty and the vast majority of renters. All the figures you have suggest it's just so much better off to own your own home. Does that need to be changed a bit, that scale, that people having to rent on the pension, it's just not feasible right now, the amount they're getting?
Well, I think that they are really struggling, and we need an increase in Commonwealth rent assistance. We need an independent tribunal to review the whole pension system.
And is that the key thing, the rent assistance? Because you can't just jack up the whole pension, but it's the rent assistance that really needs to go up.
No, I think what we need to do is look at housing. It's no different for older Australians or younger Australians. They need to be in a house to have a good life. And so social housing, we need to ramp up social housing so that people can get into a home. I've seen an example of it in regional South Australia with some land on the edge of a country town. They built housing for seniors, for ones who are on a pension, who are renting. They moved in there. They're living a good life. It can be done. And I think government could actually run a scheme like that across Australia, provide more housing for those that don't own their own home, particularly young people and also older people.
Yeah, all right. Ian, appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you as always, Tom. It's wonderful. Talk to you after the budget.